everyone! Welcome to episode 2 of Not the Worsted Knitting Podcast. My name is Michelle, and I am the knitter and knitwear designer behind meeshyfrazz Knits. I'm official now. I have a podcast. It has a name. We're on episode 2, so this is really happening, and it's kind of exciting. And if you have watched and subscribed, thank you. Really appreciate it. It's so nice to see support. Like, you put something like this out there and you just kind of think, well, I don't know, I'm just one of thousands of these. Who's gonna care? Who's gonna watch? But when you see any sort of engagement or people just saying like, congratulations, or, you know, subscribing, like it's really nice. It just makes me feel like, okay, even if I'm just doing this for like 10 people, there are still people that actually care and want to watch this, and it makes it all worth it. And it relieves a little bit of the tension of like, why am I doing this? Because like, this is really fun, but I also, you know, I guess I had this like fear of just speaking to the void, which I guess is fine. Like, I'm just talking about things that I love. So like, even if I'm just talking and my cats are around listening and I'm recording it and putting it out there, like, it doesn't really matter. So maybe not, but either way, thanks for watching. I do really appreciate it, and I'm glad you're here. So on today's episode, we're just gonna talk about a few things. I don't think this is going to be a super long episode. I don't have tons and tons of projects to show, but I've got a couple, including what I'm wearing, which I'll go ahead and start with. This is the Moonset Tee by Ozetta. I just finished this just a couple of weeks ago. My knitting group, we ended up doing sort of an impromptu knit along. It all started because my friend, I went shopping with my friend to the yarn store to pick out yarn for this because she was going to knit it. And I was just there as support. I didn't buy any yarn because I've got enough. I was just there to kind of help her pick out yarn. And this, what does this call for? This pattern calls for knitting for olive pure silk. And so she looked at that. She ended up actually going with the merino just because the silk felt a little bit rough. I'm actually really curious because I've heard a lot of people say that they really love the knitting for olive pure silk. But when I felt it, I was like, ugh. So if you've knit with that and you like it, let me know. Well, really, either way, if you've knit with it, let me know what you think of it. I think the drape looks really good. I'm curious about how it actually feels. Like, I've knit with silk before that's felt really soft, and this was surprisingly rough feeling. So I'm really curious about it. But anyway, so she ended up doing the knitting for olive merino. And I realized when she was looking at the yarns that I actually had a whole bunch of yarn in stash that was the exact same weight and gauge. So I was like, well, maybe I'll knit one too. And so I did. So what I have left of my yarn, it's a bit of a mess, but I used the Lana Grossa lace Seta Mulberry in the color Ecru, and that's what it looks like. And it's a blend of mulberry silk, baby alpaca, and virgin merino wool. And it's really soft, really luxurious, maybe a little warm for a summer garment, but it's really nice. Like, it's a nice fabric that it makes. I will warn you that when you're knitting this fabric, it looks crazy messy. Like, when I was knitting it up, I was really worried I was not gonna like this top because it just, maybe it's the silk content, but it looked really rough until I blocked it. But once I blocked it, I mean, I think it looks really great. The drape is really nice. I think the blend of alpaca and silk in there allow it to drape nicely. I will talk a little bit about this pattern and some modifications that I made, though. I keep flipping this. I'll show this. This is what it looks like. And you'll see, we'll talk a little bit about, this is a V-neck with drop shoulders. And that was actually what really drew me to wanting to make one myself, because you don't find a lot of knitted garments that are V-necks just because there's a little bit more work that goes into them. But I think it was really worth it. I'm really happy with this neckline. Like, it's really cool. And I think it's a really great pattern. But you'll see that in her version, she actually did I-cord edging for the hem and the sleeves. And I did not. I did ribbing. And I've got like a dark spot here. I don't know if I just got that wet or what, but please ignore that. And yeah, so here is my hem. I think I did like 10 rows of 1x1 ribbing in, I think I went down 1 needle size. So I believe this is knit on a size, is this knit on a size 2? Yeah, this is knit on a US 2. So I think I did a US 1 for the ribbing, just to kind of, you know, bring it in a little bit. I don't like it when the ribbing is the same size as the garment, because sometimes it kind of it comes out a little bit, and I got some hips on me, so I try not to like have everything expand. So yeah, so I did, I think, just 5 rows of ribbing for the sleeve, and then I think 10 rows of ribbing for the hem. And I chose to do that because this yarn, being that it has wool in it, as I was knitting it, it was just curling like crazy. So like, as I was knitting it, it was just doing this, and like it was rolling severely, and there was no way I was going to be able to wear this. I even blocked a portion of it to see, and it was still rolling. So I had to do ribbing for this particular fabric. And I think it looks okay. I will admit I like the way hers looks with the I-cord because it's really clean, but there just was no way this was actually going to work with that. And I think that this is okay. I chose, otherwise I knit it, I think, exactly to pattern. So I was tempted to actually not do the sleeves and just do ribbing right away. Really glad I chose not to do that. Went ahead and knit the sleeve, I think, to the same exact length, and I think it's actually the perfect length. It feels like a nice casual top. And for me, living in Western Washington, I think this is a great top to wear in spring and like early summer, because I mean, it's end of May right now and it's basically like 50 degrees and raining. So something with a little bit of wool and alpaca is actually not the worst thing, but maybe in August I won't really be reaching for it. But let me move up a little bit so you can see detail of the neckline. Like, look at how great that neckline is. So you actually start in the back. Can I turn around? I'll just show that a little bit. You start on the back band, and I won't give too much away, but you knit flat for a while. You do have to cut your yarn and pick up new yarn several times. So like, be warned that there are a lot of ends to weave in with this, but I think it's worth it because it's got such a unique construction, and when you put it all together, it just is a really nice garment. And I think a lot of people have been surprised that this was a hand knit garment because of the construction that goes into it. Even bringing in this neckline and knitting this together, it just is a really clean look, and I'm really happy with it. So definitely recommend it. If you're on the fence about the Moonset Tee, I would recommend it. It's not a beginner friendly pattern. Well, that's not fair. It actually has tons of tutorials. It's got videos. I just would say adventurous beginner, just because there are some construction techniques required that, you know, that are a little more complex than just your standard top-down raglan or yoke top. But I think anybody could knit this because the pattern is written super well. So no complaints about the pattern at all. I would probably actually make another one of these, honestly. I'd love to make it in maybe a more summer-friendly yarn. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with summer yarns. I don't know, I've knit with a few like plant-based yarns, and I've never loved them. I think the only versions that I've liked are ones where there's a blend of wool mixed in. Anytime I've knit, like I've knit with one that's like cotton and linen, oh, I did not like knitting it. And even wearing it, it feels very stiff and I just don't love it. I've knit with 100% cotton, definitely don't love that either. I've knit with a linen blend and it just felt really splitty. So if you've got like plant-based yarns that you really like or really nice summer yarns, let me know. I'd love to get some recommendations. I know there's a few that some people really like, so I'm gonna keep trying and we'll see. I'm sure it's out there. So yeah, that is the Moonset Tee by Ozetta. Next up, let's talk about the sock pattern that I've been working on that I hinted at last time. Last video, I showed this guy, which is my first version of the sock pattern that I've designed. I mentioned that I am going through my stash. I'm trying to knit up as much of my stash yarn as I can in preparation for Flock Fiber Festival this summer, which I'm very excited about. But with that means that I've got a lot of random balls of especially sock yarn, which is a little more difficult when it is striped. So this is the same yarn. This is from my 2023 Advent, so I apologize if these socks look a little worse for wear. I'm pretty rough on my socks, I guess, and I love hand knit socks and I wear them all the time and I wash them all the time, so they go through a lot. But yeah, so here's the version that I made with this yarn. This yarn is the Cozy Knitter 2023 Advent 24 stripe skein. That is the tag for it. And what I purchased was enough for 2 full pairs of socks. And as you can see, I knit myself a pretty long, pretty substantial pair and still had a lot left over. So I made this version because basically I didn't want 2 pairs of the same exact self-striping socks. I don't know, I just thought another pair like this would be really boring. And also I just couldn't really bring myself to knit a vanilla pair of this again. Life's too short. So I was thinking about how I could use a yarn that's this crazy in a way to where I could do something interesting with it, with a pattern that maybe has a little bit more interest to it, but also doesn't look crazy when you're trying to focus on stripes and, you know, stitch techniques. And what I ended up going with was this cable that gives the appearance of running down vertically. What I liked about this was that you've got all these horizontal lines and then you're breaking it up with these vertical lines, and it almost kind of creates these arrows that point down. So visually, you're really working your way down the foot. I'm sorry if that's not in focus. Is that better? I think that's probably better. Yeah. And so this is what I came up with. Just so I make sure that you can see that okay. Come on, there we go. These are created by cable 3 rights and cable 3 lefts. It's very simple, and it's like an 8-stitch repeat, and that's how you achieve this look. Now, the interesting part of this pattern is that originally this was actually meant to be for my husband, because as I said, I already had a pair of the self-striping socks and I wanted him to have a pair. He's very knit-worthy. He loves my hand knit socks, so I try to always make a version for him as well, and that way we can kind of have our matching socks, which is super fun. But I was knitting this up for him, and as I was working through it, I was like, something's a little off here. If you look, you can probably see, yeah, all right. I'm gonna try not to point because that seems to change the focus. But if you look at the top of that sock, you can see these ridges that are formed. That's one of the things I actually really like about this pattern is the texture it creates. I think it's really beautiful. But what that does is that's actually cinching in the fabric. And when it does that, it's shrinking the entire foot a little bit. And what it ended up doing was shrinking it enough to where it fit me perfectly, but it was way too tight for my husband. And we are actually, if you go by your standard sock sizes, I typically wear a 64 stitch sock knit on a US 1 needle. And my husband typically wears a a 72 stitch sock knit on a US 1 needle. So it essentially dropped it down a whole size because these fit me great. Like, these are perfect for me. So with that in mind, I needed to go back to the drawing board a little bit on how to make this actually fit for the sizes intended. And like I mentioned earlier, this is an 8-stitch repeat, which means that I couldn't just adjust it for each size as written for your standard socks. I had to essentially take 2 sets of stitch counts and adjust based on needle size. And it's still something I'm experimenting with right now, but hypothetically, for sizes 1 and 2, you would cast on 64 stitches, but either cast on in a US 1 or what I'm thinking will be a US 1.5. And then for sizes 3 and 4, you would cast on 80 stitches in the same, either the US 1 or the US 1.5. Now, the reason I say I think 1.5 is because that is what I'm testing right now. My second version of this actually does fit my husband perfectly. These are the 80 stitch versions, and what I did was knit this on the smaller size needle. So this is 80 stitches knit on US 1 to give you the intended size of a size large sock. And like I said, fits him perfectly. So that worked out great. That worked out well. So what I have to test now is knitting for the larger needle size. So I'm knitting a version for myself, which I dropped on the floor, and I'm knitting that in 64 stitches, but with a US 1.5. And so we are going to see if this is going to fit me when all is said and done. If it's still too small, then I'll need to bump it up to a US 2 and try again. Before I get too carried away in these though, I'm gonna go back to my last sock and talk a little bit about the yarn here. So this is the solid version. After I had to break my husband's heart and tell him that these were not gonna fit his foot, I let him pick out a yarn from my stash, and he picked this, which is his favorite color. He loves blue grays. And this is a really nice tonal yarn. I'm actually really happy with how it came out. And it was really nice to see a solid version of this because I wanted to see how this would knit up in multiple types of yarn because it's such a specific stitch technique. And this is the yarn. This is Polka Dot Sheep Tenderfoot, and the colorway is Slate. I believe this is a 75-25 merino nylon blend. And it's just a great standard sock yarn. I've used this in several socks. I've also used it in a couple of shawls. Great yarn, really happy with it. I think the tonal appearance is really nice. Like, I think it really helps show off some of the dimension in that. Really happy with that. That version's good, fits him, super happy. So we'll move on to the third version, talk a little bit more about the yarn. So I did a striped version, I did a solid version, and I was like, well, I gotta do a speckled version. I was a little worried about this. I think I'm still a little worried about this, but it's fun, so like, does it really matter? This is knit with the main color, which is Salty Blonde Fibers, what is it, 2-ply sock in Burn Book, which I love it just for the Mean Girls reference. I mean, you could have just left it there and it would be my favorite yarn, but it's also so fun. This was gifted to me by a dear friend, and I think she did great because I love it. Look how fun that is. And then the contrast, so the cuff, the heel, and eventually the toe is knit in Silly Goose Yarns Plump Fingering in Bubblegum, which if you watched my last video, you heard all about as I ranted and raved. It is the pink band in my Prismatic Reflection sweater there. Show you band for that. Like I said, that is the Bubblegum colorway, which when I put them together, I was like, yeah, that has to happen. So I'd love to know your thoughts, actually. I'm really back and forth on, I worry that this yarn is just way too crazy for the stitch pattern. I even put out a poll on Instagram just to kind of get people's opinions, and it's kind of spread. Unsurprisingly, this, at least the last I checked, this guy was the winner, the solid version. But what I found interesting was that the striped and speckled versions were actually tied. So I'm curious to go back on there and see if that's changed at all. I don't know. Every time I look at one, I'm like, oh no, that's my favorite. But then I look at the other one, I'm like, no, that's really good too. And I think what I need to finish this. I need to block it and I need to put it on, and then we'll be able to see whether or not this is gonna work or if it's just gonna be just a little bit too crazy. But either way, I think it's helpful even just to show how the stitch pattern will look with different yarns, because, you know, sometimes when people, they have that skein that they don't know what to do with and they think it might work, but you get to see this example and be like, nope, that's not what I want to do. And you'll know, like, okay, I want to do this in a tonal yarn, and there you go. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you have a favorite of the three. I still don't have a name for this pattern. Really hoping to come up with a name soon. I hope that by next video, I will have finished this and I will have a name and I can share that with you. Like I said, a lot hinges on this version. So I need to finish this guy. I need to block it. I need to make sure it fits me. Assuming it fits okay after blocking, then I'll be good to go to write up the pattern, and then I will call for testers. So I'll probably do a video by the time I'm ready to call for testers. So hopefully that will be included in my next video and that you won't have missed that. I don't expect that. But it just really depends on if this works or not, and if I have to redo it in the next needle size up, and make sure that I still like the way it looks on a US too, because I actually think it still looks great. I mean, I can even show, this was knit on a US 1.5, this was knit on a US 1, and I really don't think you lose any of the integrity of the stitches either way. I hope those are in focus. Yeah. So this is, it's really fun, really enjoying it. I will have to knit the pair for each of these before I actually have anything I can wear myself. But, I mean, that's kind of the fun of it, is like, you make all these versions so then you can go through and make the pair and then you've got all these socks. Yeah, I think that about covers it for what I'm working on in terms of current open patterns. I've got a couple of other things that are in the works that I kind of want to share, but I don't think I can share too much just yet, but I'm really excited about it. As I mentioned before, I think I've mentioned this like multiple times and probably not given much backstory, but Flock Fiber Festival, if you don't know, is, as named, a fiber festival that comes to Seattle in August. This will be the second year, actually. Last year was the first year. And if you went last year, then you know how amazing it was. Like, it was so much better than my friends and I expected. Like, it was great. I mean, there were more booths than I could have imagined. Everybody was so amazing. Like, I feel like we met so many people. We met a lot of people that like I know off of Instagram, but had never actually seen in person. Like putting faces to like Instagram handles and meeting people and making those real connections, and also learning about yarn that I'd never heard before. Like, I know I keep talking about Silly Goose yarns, but like I'd never heard of her yarn before, and I'm probably her #1 biggest fangirl now because her colors are amazing. And it was just so many moments like that of being exposed to these companies and these people that I would have never met otherwise. So short story long on that. Flock is coming back this August, and I was having a chat with Wendy at Hazel Knits. She's a yarn dyer who's local to Seattle, and if you haven't heard of her, I highly recommend you look at their shop. Hazel Knits, their yarn is spectacular. They work with their own mill, and the yarn is just, there are so many colors. Like, it's incredible. You go there and it's literally floor to ceiling, just yarn everywhere. Like, on every single surface there's yarn in every color you could imagine. Like, if you need a specific green, you go in there, you will find that specific green, because I swear to you, they have like 25 shades of green. It's spectacular. So I was in there not too long ago shopping, and Wendy mentioned that they were going to have a booth at Flock this year, and we were chatting all about that. And she mentioned that she was going to be doing a local designer spotlight, and we ended up talking about doing a design collaboration, which I am so excited about. So we are doing a design that will be specific for Flock. I should be able to actually show off some things soon, like maybe even next video, but I have to finish some things up and get some things written and tested before I can really do that. But what I can say is that I am doing a color work sock pattern with Hazel Knits yarn, and we will also be doing a couple of accessories as well, because I know not everybody likes to knit socks, but it is Flock themed, and that's all I will say. I wanna say so much more, but I won't. But what I can do is I can show you most of the yarns that were used, except for the main color, because I ran out and Wendy is actually sending me more. And that is part of why I can't talk about it, because I'm so close to finishing the sock, but I didn't quite finish it, and I need to check a few things before, and I'm dropping yarn. Okay. Here is the palette. Oh, so good. And the contrast will just be this linen color, and then the main color is like a sagey, minty, really more of like a minty blue green, very pale. So just imagine that with these. Oh, it's so good. This is Hazel Knits Artisan Sock, and I will share all of the colors and details once I actually talk more about this pattern. It's killing me to not talk about it right now. I really just want to like, lift the sock and show you, but I'm not gonna. I'm going to put it back so I'm not tempted. All right, it's off to the side. But we're both very excited about it, and so what we're hoping to do is that I should be finishing up that sock within the next few days, depending on when I get the yarn. The sock I'm knitting right now is a toe-up version. I did that just based on the colorwork motif that I designed. I thought it would look better knit up that way with the stitch direction, just based on the actual motifs. But I know not everybody likes to knit toe up, and so I'm thinking that for my second sock, I might actually knit that cuff down and see how that looks. And like, if the motif looks okay, then I might offer that as a secondary option for the pattern, so people can choose if they want to knit cuff down or toe up, just depending. And it has a shadow wrap heel, which I did. You could probably also do an afterthought heel. I might include both, But I like the shadow wrap heel when you do color work, because then you don't have to worry about, if you've ever done a color work sock and you add an afterthought heel, sometimes picking up the stitches can be a little fiddly because you've got all of the yarn that you're carrying, and if you don't kind of catch your yarns, if you don't catch your floats quite frequently, it can be a little bit messy when you're picking up those stitches for the heel. It can be done, like I've done it before, and I have patterns that recommend both options, but I feel like the shadow wrap heel just kind of avoids that completely because you knit the heel immediately. And I didn't even mention this when I was talking about my other socks, so I will bring that back. Okay. These guys, that's an afterthought heel. So I actually think technically it's a forethought heel because I put the yarn in ahead of time. I put waste yarn in and then I ripped it out and knit up the heel. But that can be done after the fact, essentially. So you knit a tube and then you cut this area and then you knit in the heel. Versus a shadow wrap heel, which I have done in this version, where you get to the point where you want to add your heel and then you immediately start knitting it. And what I like about the shadow wrap heel is, one, it's immediate and you get it done right away, but two, it's just done with short rows. And while it seems complicated, it's actually quite simple. And I actually hadn't done a shadow wrap heel in a while. I've been doing a lot of afterthought heels because sometimes I'm just kind of lazy and I'm like, ugh, I don't want to deal with the heel right now, I'll deal with it later. But I don't know why I'm not doing this more. Like, I should be knitting more shadow wrap heels because it's great. And I'm so relieved that now all I have left to do on this is just knit the foot. I don't have to worry about the heel anymore. So that is essentially what will be included with the other pattern that I cannot talk about. I like to include both. I typically include afterthought and shadow wrap as my heels just because those are my go-tos, and I don't particularly like the heel flap and gusset. That's what I started out knitting, and I have a lot of socks with that, but I know it's different for everybody, and that's kind of the point of having multiple heel options, but just where you add all of those slip stitches in the back, I don't wear my heels down there at all. I wear my heels down at the ball of the foot and the main portion of the heel. And so that doesn't really matter for me. And actually an afterthought heel is great because if you wear out the heel, you literally just rip that heel out and replace it because it's the same technique that you did to put the heel in to begin with. So that's kind of my go-to. But again, it's different for everybody. People like different techniques depending on their heel shape or how they wear out their own heels. So your mileage may vary. But yeah, so that's all I can say about that pattern. Keep an eye out because I will be doing a call for testers for that sock pattern as well. It's probably going to be a secret test just because we don't want to share that motif until it's ready. But once we test it, we're gonna promote it so that we can all knit up and wear our socks to flock, which means that I need to find some cute sandals. Like I've never been the person to wear socks and sandals before, but I'm really tempted to either get a really cute pair of like Birkenstocks or some jellies or something. So if you have some really cute recommendations of shoes to wear with hand knit socks, please let me know because I desperately need to find some. I need some cute sandals that I can wear to flock. All right, that kind of covers all of my works in progress, patterns that I have going on that I can and can't talk about. I think the only other thing, it's like a future work in progress, so I guess I'll share it just because it kind of ties in with this Moonset Tee that I'm wearing. And that is the fact that my next up on my garment knit is going to be the Field Day cardigan. Carrying on with the amazing Hazel Knits yarn, I have all of this Lively DK from her. Like I said, please go to Hazel Knits and see her yarn because it's incredible. This is Shannypants in Lively DK, and it's stunning, and I've been trying to figure out what to do with it. I mean, I knew I wanted it to be a cardigan. I've been trying to figure out what kind of cardigan. And my same friend who knit the Moonset Tee with me, she decided that she wanted to do the field day cardigan, so I decided to join her. It turns out it's actually a very similar construction to this top, so I felt like it kind of worked out because this top is fresh in my mind. Obviously it's a lot of knitting flat regardless, but it'll be DK weight, which is great. And I think that this green, the Shannypants, is gonna be stunning in a cardigan. I am just now noticing, if you can see, that's Bagel. That's my cat Bagel, and he has just discovered my sweater. So this might mean that it's time to wrap up soon because I feel like that's about to be a disaster. But yes, so future project is hopefully going to be the field day cardigan in Lively DK by Hazel Knits and Shannypants. I'm hoping that maybe I will have started that by my next video, but I can't make any promises. Like I said, I've got a whole bunch of socks to knit and a couple of patterns to write, so we'll see. But I'm excited about it. I just want to say thank you for tuning in. If you watched all the way to now, I appreciate it. I'm really excited to be doing this, and it's just fun to talk about this stuff and share with it, especially when I get feedback and realize that people have watched and they agree, or even if they disagree, it's just fun to chat about. If you have any questions or you would like to see more from me, you can find me on Instagram at meeshyfrazz. I am also meeshyfrazz on Ravelry. My website is meeshyfrazzknits.com, and you can also email me at meeshyfrazz@gmail.com. Feel free to also leave a comment below if you would prefer not to email or message me any other way. And until next time, thank you. Bye.